Who are you and what are you doing here today?
My name is John Lackey. I've had major mental health issues for over 45 years. I'm very honored to be here today because this organization, one of its goals is to destigmatize mental health. And my having had mental health issues for so long, I know very much the detrimental effects of the stigma of mental health. So anything I can do to help destigmatize mental health, I'm all for it.
Excellent. And why is it important to come out and support community events like this?
To let people know that they're not alone, to let people know that mental health is just as important as physical health or any other kind of health. So it's just to really destigmatize mental health so men, especially men, don't have such a problem in seeking help. What would I say? The power of love to overcome major mental health issues, and that mental health issues can be lessened or alleviated.
This year's theme is men's mental health. Why is men's mental health so important?
Well, you know, for me it's really important because I benefited the most from experiential therapy, and that's talking about feelings. And men, there's such a stigma for men that they should bottle things up and keep things inside, tough it out, so to speak. And that, to me, is one of the biggest killers of men. And so anything I can do to alleviate that, that's my theme too. I lost my dad when I was a year and a half old in a deer hunting tragedy. I didn't know it for a long time, but it had a profound effect on me, and I grew up afraid with no model for my male identity. I even felt responsible for my dad's death because it was never talked about. To get by, I look at the positive traits of older men. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother. I have 3 sisters, one is younger. My mother remarried when I was 13. I remember laying awake at night, wondering how my stepfather would attack me the next day and how best I could cut my losses. My older sister got married when I was in my mid-teens, and an uncle of mine was driving me home, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, he had his hand in my pants molesting me. This made me sick, and in my mind, it validated the abuse from my stepfather. My stepfather was a light plane enthusiast. He owned a small 2-seater airplane. One cold winter day, he was teaching me and my stepbrother how to fly. I didn't want to fly because I didn't trust my stepfather, but I didn't want to give him any ammunition to be abusive either, so I flew. At one point in the plane, I became very scared. I was hanging onto the control stick, just shaking, praying to God to land the plane. And all of a sudden the fear stopped. It was gone, but I was gone too. I had broke from reality. My stepbrother left home when he was 18. I was 19. My stepfather blamed me and he threatened my life. And it felt like an axe went across my neck, and this killed my spirit. I felt I was a failure, that I didn't know how to be a son, and that I couldn't get my stepfather to like me. Around that time too, I also had a cousin in a drunken rage put a table knife to my throat and threatened to slit my throat. And what my stepfather, the abuses there and the other abuses, what it did was emotionally castrate me, which caused a chemical imbalance which physically castrated me. And this was so horrific that I lost my mind, I lost myself, I lost my soul, I lost my sanity. And I had bottled all these traumas up, and in doing so, it created an end to me. And in essence, I committed emotional suicide on a subconscious level in order to survive. And my heart didn't have to stop beating for me to be dead. It feels like, in varying degrees, I've been a walking dead man ever since. I developed major mental health issues. For the last 45 years, I've had diagnoses of chronic schizoid depression, schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. I felt at one time as if my mind had a mind of its own. There was constant torment of horrible thoughts, constant feelings of non-existence. My reality for over 45 years was non-reality. I was like I was here and I'm not here. I drank a lot at one time too. I'd fight the booze and the pills off, and after a while they'd be too much and I'd pass out and I'd be free from the torment for a while. I didn't dream for over 10 years. It was just black, and if I did dream, it was war dreams. I worked a lot during this time too because I thought I was to blame and I thought I was weak, so I pushed myself. But I got a huge break in 1978 when my stepfather was killed in a small plane crash. A huge weight lifted off me and I realized I wasn't to blame. And this made me very angry, and for a lot of years I lived on rage, being the man I thought I should be. But after a while I became beat, exhausted because of my illness, and I ended up in the Victoria Hospital in Winnipeg in 1985 because I was afraid I'd take my own life. But the hospital stay didn't work for me at the time because I had bought into the myth that mentally ill people were crazy, twisted sick. With hospitals full of sick people is too big a barrier. It took years of hard work and therapy to convince myself I wasn't crazy. In fact, it was 29 years before I had the courage or the health to ask my psychiatrist at the time if he thought I was crazy. And he lowered his eyes, shook his head, and said no. So there was a psychologist at the hospital, though, that referred me to this this therapist in the counseling center. But just a little story of my time in the hospital then. I got up one morning, there's a psychologist nearby. And she says, "How are you this morning, John?" And I said, "Well, I'm feeling kind of confused." And she says, "Well, you know, confusion is a sign of growth." And I said, "Gee whiz, I should be 50 feet tall." So this psychologist referred me to this counseling center, and here I received the most powerful healing force in the universe, and that was love. Love from my therapist, love from the men and women in the groups I belonged to there. They gave me a therapy and a place to do the hard work to help heal me of my illness and my life. They helped me switch from a position of victim to a position of empowerment. They helped me switch from living on rage to living on love, which is a huge, huge transformation. They gave me tools to deal with my stepfather. I took back my power. I now see his good side and feel his support. Quite a few years ago, I started the forgiving process, and now I forgive my stepfather on all levels. I phoned my uncle. He lived out of province. I told him I didn't like what he had done. He heard me and apologized 3 times. And do I still have anger? Yes, because mental personal growth is cyclical, not linear. So every time my wellness brings up a new layer of health, the emotions come up, but in lesser degree than before. And I have more tools in my toolbox to alleviate the situations. I've learned to trust my meds, where I don't fight them. I've been able to reduce the amounts a lot. I got a new psychiatrist in 2005, and we tried 2 new meds, and they counteracted against each other, and I became very sick, and I ended up in the hospital again. But this time it didn't take too long, and I was able to get meds that helped me balance more myself. In 2010, I had a major shift. I started to feel like I was getting my mind back. It was a huge godsend. I've been building on it ever since. I quit cold turkey. A sedative I was taking is actually a narcotic called clonazepam, and I replaced with our natural body substance called melatonin. And I cut myself off it as well. In 2013, found out I had prostate cancer. 2014, I had my prostate removed. And what helped me a lot with my mental health issues was befriending them. And I did the same thing with my cancer. And I found out the fear of the cancer was actually cracking holes in my psyche and allowing me to contact myself that I hadn't been in contact with years. So the cancer was has been a huge godsend. It's really helped me heal mentally. And just last November, they didn't quite get it all in 2014, and I knew this day was coming. I need some radiation in a week's time to mop up the remains, as my cancer doctor says. But in November 2018, it was 40 years since my stepfather died in a small plane crash, and I was there at the time, and I felt absolutely nothing. I was gone. But in November, here the fear again of the cancer cracked holes in my psyche again, and allowed me to feel the deepest part of myself I felt yet, and really know for the first time that my stepfather was dead. It was just a huge godsend, and without the cancer I wouldn't have been able to do that. So befriending the cancer has helped me big time. So because of my life, at one time I felt my sensitivity and vulnerability were a curse, very unmanly. But as I befriended my mental illness and transformed the terrible thoughts into emotions, owned them, expressed them, and let them go, I soon realized my mental health was greatly improving. I learned sensitivity and vulnerability are a great strength. Also, before I could heal mentally, I had to heal spiritually. And for me, spirituality is simply loving kindness, living from the heart. And also because I had lost my mind, self, soul, and sanity, I had to think outside of the box. And I enlisted the help of psychic mediums who have been a real godsend in helping me retrieve my mind and soul and bring them back cleansed, energized, and integrated into all the parts of me. I'm going to share a short story about a therapist who thought outside of the box. His name was Viktor Frankl, and he was a Jewish man who had survived the Holocaust. And one day, this father brought his little girl in to see him. The little girl had been in a car accident with her mother, and her mother had died in the accident, and the little girl hadn't spoken a word since then. So the father brought the daughter into Viktor Frankl, and Viktor Frankl took the little girl into his office, sat her in a chair, and got down on all fours and put his hand out to her like this. And he stayed like that the whole session. And the little girl hasn't said a word. At the end of the session, Viktor Frankl gets up, he takes the little girl back to her dad, they make another appointment, the father and daughter leave, and very shortly after that, the father phones Viktor Frankl and he says, you can cancel our next appointment. And Viktor Frankl says, why? What happened? He says, my daughter started speaking. Viktor Frankl says, what would she say? She said, Dad, that man's crazy. So I love that story, thinking outside of the box. And so I'll end with a poem I wrote of how I've empowered myself. And I call it A Man I Called Dad. It goes, I grew up without my dad due to a hunting tragedy, and I wished I had a memory of a time that couldn't be. My heart ached really badly. No protection was my fright. No dad to say I love you, and that everything would be all right. The fear was way too much, and I had to be a man. I had to protect my mom, my sisters, and my grandma. I felt the enormous pressure. My knees buckled with the weight. Not once did I complain. The good boy was my might. My mind was really straining, for it really was the end. My surprising saving grace was my heart, a huge godsend. It opened up the floodgates. Tears flowed like rivers grand. My body surrendered grief, drove troubles from my mind. There dawned a realization I wasn't fatherless. In the mirror I saw my image, and God had truly blessed. Thank you.
Today we are at the Flats in Neepawa for the 3rd annual Neepawa Miles for Mental Health Fun Run.
3, 2, 1.
This is the 3rd annual Miles for Mental Health Fun Run. We have a 1 kilometer and 5 kilometer walk event today, and 5 and 10 kilometer runs. What keeps me coming back is the tremendous support that we get from the community, the feedback that we get from participants about how important the message is and how much it means to people to be able to do something and see that put into action in different ways.
My name is Mark Barrett. I'm on the committee for Miles for Mental Health. My role is the race coordinator, so I set up the race course, get everything ready for the day, tell the crowd where they're going, how they're going, and make sure it's safe and fun for everyone for the event. We've got almost 100 people out again this year, which is wonderful. Raised over $10,000 this year. We're raising money for local efforts to raise awareness for mental health in the community. Men's mental health is our overall theme. We're having a speaker today named John Lackey to represent that theme and tell his story, which is going to be really exciting, and get that message out to all men that you don't have to be shy about mental health. You don't have to be that strong hero, that it affects everyone. It affects men, women, children, and you got to deal with it, and you got to speak out, and you got to get support and ask for support for your mental health. I'm a firm believer that exercise and being active is your best way to combat the effects of mental health, and research shows that being active is even as effective as some antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, and this run just represents that. It gets people out, it gets the community active. I think it's really important to make sure that people have events to go to and support in the community through this stuff to get them active and to get them on the right path to help them for their mental health.
My name is John Lackey. I've had major mental health issues for over 45 years. I'm very honored to be here today because this organization, one of its goals is to destigmatize mental health. The power of love to overcome major mental health issues, and that mental health issues can be lessened or alleviated. I benefited the most from experiential therapy, and that's talking about feelings. And men, there's such a stigma for men that they should bottle things up and keep things inside, tough it out, so to speak. And that, to me, is one of the biggest killers of men. So this psychologist referred me to this counseling center, and here I received the most powerful healing force in the universe, and that was love.
My name is JC. I am the daughter of Peter Decoding, who the Peter's 500 fundraiser that they did this year was in memory of. So I'm just here to speak and give a little bit of the family perspective on what it's like to deal with somebody who's struggling with mental health and live with it in a family setting. My message is just to raise awareness on mental health and make it normal to be able to talk about it. It's a lot harder for men to talk about mental health, I think, than women. They're more apt to keep their feelings in and, you know, be the providers for the family, and they don't feel like they can ever show weakness, so they tend to struggle with it a lot more than women do. So it's really important to raise awareness about it and make them feel like they can be comfortable to talk about it as well.
Had I been gifted with the knowledge I have today about mental health, I would have done things so differently, both before and after losing my dad. I would have talked more about it with my family. Too often we didn't discuss the things that were bothering us because it was just easier to keep it in. I would have let my younger siblings know that it was okay to be angry sometimes, that it's healthy to cry and let your feelings out. I would have leaned on my friends and people within our community a little bit more rather than just trying to cover it up. And most importantly, I would have sought out more appropriate professional help, not just for my dad, but for the entire family.
I'm Enoch Mac, and this is my husband Ray. And we did Peter's 500 in memory of my brother, who we lost to suicide about 8 years ago. And we paired up with Miles for Mental Health to collect pledges. So Peter's 500 is a path that goes from the north of Holland to the south of Holland. It's about 500 kilometers, so Peter's 500. And the support from the town was amazing. We didn't have to do a whole lot. People just jumped on board and were super supportive, yeah.
Mental health, while it may be an individual thing, we all live within communities. And it's how we interact within our communities that determine whether we're resilient or what our state of mental well-being is. There's an old African proverb that says it takes a community to raise a child. Well, whether you're a child or not, you're part of an entire community. If your community is healthy, your people tend to be healthier.
Hi, I'm Debra and I work for the settlement office. I'm the volunteer coordinator. Diane Martin, one of the organizers, approached me and asked me if I can invite some of my Filipino, friends to volunteer for this event. For us immigrants, it's really important because this is one way of getting involved in the community and also get a chance to talk to Canadians. So it's very important to let the people know that mental health is very important, that they can get support whenever they want to, and live a happy life.
Okay, you can go to our website. Also, we have ongoing fundraising through the website, and donations can be made at the event today, or you can go to our site, and we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, Miles for Mental Health, Neepawa Miles for Mental Health.